Shalom, 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 everybody. I pray everybody's doing well. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's midweek meditations. It's time for us to get into the scriptures and start to meditate on these things that help us be better people right now, this week. Ain't no, I'm working on it. Let's make change today. So I want to thank y'all for who have joined so far. Shout out to different people. Zuli Vargas, Tamika Shanta Carter, We got a couple people. Princess Abalaya, yeah, all praises for joining in today. Make sure y'all hit that share button. Make sure that y'all help get this spread to the four corners. People all around the world could use a message that could definitely help them from a biblical perspective. So all praises for that. We got people on Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, and each of y'all, thank you for tuning in. We got Takaya, Ariel, Solomon, Ariel. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hit that share button. Go ahead and invite a couple of your friends. Get 10 friends invited, as well as put it on your wall. Let people know that this is what you're listening to. Get them a chance to catch it, because you got a lot of friends and family that I know you wish were more godly. I know you wish that they would repent. And if you're going to be an example to them, sometimes you ain't going to be able to hand it to them yourself. As the scriptures say, one man planteth, another man watereth, the Most High to get an increase. Everybody got to play a certain part. And, that could be your part. So today's topic is don't follow the multitude. Okay, don't follow the multitude. What? To do evil, right? If you saw the image for today, the intro image, you had the multitude of people who have decided to go a certain route that was against God's laws, and that's the thing that we got to pay attention to. Now, this was provoked. This was put into my mind to think about as I saw an article that talked about President Obama, former president. The one that y'all say your president is black. The one that makes you feel like you finally got something, and now the world is fair, now the world is equal, now there's no such thing as racism all of a sudden. That president right there. Well, the article was basically saying the only thing that he really did with his 8 years in office was basically gave us homosexual or same-sex marriage. And he opened the door for that LGBT movement. And the reason why that struck me is a lot of people started going in that direction and coming out, if you will, and following behind that as he allowed and pushed forward on that. See, in previous times in our lives, I'm sure that we can all agree that there was a time period where even though the people were there that had these belief systems, that had these feelings, that wanted to indulge in their own lust the way they wanted to, it just wasn't a thing to talk about. It wasn't a thing to put out into the public, and it was just you do you and do what you want to do, and that's cool. But then after this point in time where the president pushed for it, got the bill signed and passed, it became something that now you can't speak against it. Now you can't have an opinion opposite of it. And now we have the door opened up for all type of other things that come with it. So the topic of today's lesson, it has nothing to do with homosexuality, though. The topic has nothing to do with same-sex marriage. The topic has nothing to do with, quote-unquote, the president of the United States. But the topic has to do with what does this mean, don't follow the multitude to do evil. With Midweek Meditations, the goal is to meditate and get the understanding that you need to make immediate application. And we do this every week, 5:30 Central. Not to go into deep sayings that don't help you get salvation. Not to go into topics that are controversial and the popular thing that's buzzing in all of Israel. But to go into things that, if you really start to think about it, you can change something about you that can give you an opportunity to get into the kingdom. And that's what we got to be focused on, examining ourselves whether we actually be in this faith or not. Now, I need y'all to bear with me today. I had tons of notes, and then they weren't saved, and the computer was rebooted. It was acting slow and less than optimal, and then next thing you know, so now, that's okay, you get the freestyle. I'm just going to have to tell you what I got. And, the Lord, being that it's His words, He'll guide it. I won't worry about it. So I thank y'all for tuning in once again. For those of you who just tuned in, Danielle, Janelle, please hit that share button. If you're on Facebook, hit share. If you're on YouTube, hit the share button. If you're on Periscope, hit the share button. As Nadsa 2019, I hope I said that right, just joined in. So all praises. We got people on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. Now, let's go ahead and hit the opening scripture, right? So we're going to hit Exodus 23 and 2. Now, don't forget, we had Bible Trivia Tuesday. We had Motivation Monday. We've had plenty of opportunities for you to read and get your mind on this topic. So real quick, before we start with Exodus 23 and 2 as a whole, let's just go over real quick the key verses that we talked about this week as our daily verses, and give you a couple extra that might have not got posted. So Romans 16 and 17 says, "Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine you have learned, and avoid them." So we understand from Paul's writings that we're being advised to avoid those who cause dissension and offenses. Now, when I recently spoke about a class about not being easily offended in a Sabbath class, we got into the understanding that when it says offend, is meaning to cause you to stumble, to cause you to lose your way, perhaps be inclined to sin. So there are certain people who may cause division and cause you to sin. Not that they ate the last cookie, not that they passed gas and made you feel some type of way about the fact that the air wasn't as fresh as it could be, but the fact that they have done something so grave that now you have fallen on a stumbling block. And what we learned in that lesson, and y'all have to get a chance to see it for the Sabbath classes that we do, what we learned in that is we got to take responsibility for our own actions. And no matter what someone else does to us, we can't take it personal, and we can't be so offended by it that it causes us to sin, because at the day of judgment, you can't say, well, he made me do it. Now, the next verse is Proverbs 1 and 10. It says, "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not." If a sinner is trying to convince you to sin along with them, don't consent or agree to do such a thing. If you know better, do better. Now, see, the thing is, there's a lot of peer pressure in this world. There's a lot of people who are followers and not leaders. There are people who are not strong enough to make the right decision for themselves and can sometimes get swayed by other people who have more influence over them. Why they have more influence? Many reasons to answer that question. But the fact of the matter is, when a sinner entices you, if that sinner has influence, it may be difficult for some of you to say no. It may be difficult for some of you to stay away. Some of us have spirits on us that are very attracted to the sin that others are doing. And if we're not careful, even though we call ourselves repentant, even though we call ourselves the children of Israel, because for some of you who may be on here right now, that's who we are. Those who fit the curses of Deuteronomy 28, those who were part of the transatlantic slave trade, as the Bible describes it, those who have been oppressed by every nation on this earth are the Israelites, and we are the ones who God was referring to when he spoke about sinners, and we are the ones that are not supposed to be consenting to what the others do. See, you got all these other nations that do what they do, and they don't receive the same judgments that the Most High will judge the Israelites for, because he looks at them as a special people. When I say them, I'm talking about us. I'm talking about me. He looks at me as a special person who has to abide by rules that are different than those who are not as special. That's how the world is in the eyes of God, despite the fact that most people don't agree with that. But that's what the Bible says. It says, My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Now, we also should have gotten into Revelation 18:4. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. See, it's being specific to the people that are supposed to come out. Everybody not coming out. My people, that ye be not partakers of her sins. So there are those who are going to be in the midst of sin, and there are those who should come out of that action, should not be in the midst of that sin. And that ye receive not of her plagues, because you don't want to receive the judgments that are going to be received for those things that they're doing. Now, furthermore, Psalms 1:1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Now, all of us want to be blessed. Am I wrong? I know that each and every one of you wants to be blessed, right? But we got to look at what the Bible says and the things that make us blessed, because many of us have done this thing which is not of any value to us, which is always claiming to be blessed. And claiming those blessings on top of the sin that you're doing. You know, I used to make fun of how rappers, when they would win awards at the BET Awards or whatever, they say first giving honor to God for their song that was all about the opposite of what God represented. You know, you got Nelly and the Saint Lunatics doing Tip Drill, and that's how they opened up their award speech, first giving honor to God. Now, okay, God is alive, God has a hand, God has grace, God has mercy, but don't forget that the devil can bless you too. And while God is giving you a chance to get right, the devil is making you feel that your prosperity is because you're in the favor of God, but sometimes your prosperity is basically set before you to be the root of your destruction. So it says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. You're blessed, brother. You're blessed, sister, if you're not going to walk in the counsel of the ungodly, meaning you're not going to be influenced and swayed by those who are against God or who are against the keeping of God's commandments. It says, nor standeth in the way of sinners. You're going to be blessed if you're not amongst the sinners that are around you to be that negative influence and to cause you trouble. Because the thing is, the people that you're around, you're going to be influenced by. The people that you're around are going to be the people that you're most likely to be like and similar to. And so some wise have said, show me your 5 friends, I'll show you who you are. You hang around 5 people similar to this, then you'll be the next one. So we got to consider those things. Now, let me grab a script. Proverbs 12:26. To back that up. Because the scripture says this: the righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. Now that word seduce, you know, I think we all understand what that word means. It's not one of the most hidden SAT words. The word seduce is another word for entice, to attract. It's to get at someone to be tempted or allured into doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So it says that the way of the wicked seduceth. So that wicked spirit that some people have is very seductive. Hence the form of the word seduction in a sexual sense. You know, that wicked spirit is so enticing that it makes you just want to do something that is not right, because the Bible tells you about being married and the bedroom being undefiled and the honorable mention of marriage. But in the girlfriend and boyfriend, in the same-sex marriage thing, or same-gender loving mindset that some people have, as seductive as it is to them, it's a wicked spirit. because adultery, fornication are sins that are worthy of judgment and death. And the things that are wicked are never things that you don't want to do. It's always something that you want to do. It's always something that'll bring you pleasure. It's always something that'll make you happy. It says the righteous is more excellent. The righteous is more excellent because he's able to resist that temptation. So now let's finally get to Exodus 23 and 2. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in any cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Now that's a verse that we all know. And as we look at the image for today, the thumbnail for today, you see that there was a great multitude of people who were lined up in support and the cause of something that should not be being done. And for most of us, in the simple terms that is written right here in front of us, we think we fully understand what's going on. But that's when you have to have context. That's when you have to have precepts to give better understanding. Not to say that your understanding could be wrong or would be wrong, but it could be and it would be in some cases. And now you have the opportunity to get it right. So let's start up and read 1 and down. It says, thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. If thou meet thine enemy's ox, or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring him back to him again. If thou see the ass of him that hateth thee lying under his burden, thou wouldest forbear to help him. Thou shalt surely help him. Thou shalt not wrest judgment of thy poor in his cause. Keep thee far from a false matter, and the innocent and the righteous slay thou not. For I will not justify the wicked. And thou shalt not take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. Also thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you know that the heart of a stranger, seeing that ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. So we had to read this whole first part because it's all coming together as one understanding. Don't isolate just verse 2 without getting the context from 1 through 9. Now, what is it going into? We're going to have to figure that out today. And in effort to figure that out, we got to examine words. We got to understand the context of the people that are writing these words. We're going to have to examine the precepts that are related to these words. We're going to have to do these different things. So let's do it. So the first thing I want to point out is this. Exodus 23 and 2 says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Let's stop there and break that part down. Because that semicolon that is there continues the understanding, but it is breaking down the separation of the point and the thought. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. So you as a person should not follow a multitude to do evil. So of course, we're thinking things of, well, a numerous amount of people. So as we look up this word, multitude, let's find out what it says. This is the word multitude, a large number, a large gathering of people. The mass of ordinary people without power or influence. The state of being numerous. Let's go to, that was Oxford. Let's go to Merriam-Webster. Okay, the state of being many, a great number of people, a populace or public. And let's get a little bit more from Dictionary.com, just see if anything different. A large number of things. A large number of people or things. A large crowd of people. Large and numerous. Ordinary people from whom the largest group in society. So it's representing, in this case, at the top level, base level of this, large numbers of people. If the majority of people are going with it, don't just go with it. Just because the majority, if it's wrong, no matter how many people are choosing to do that wrong. So when we look at what has gone on in society today, there's a lot of wrong that's going on, and wrong is becoming so popular that people are going with it. People are swayed by the wrong. People are accepting of the wrong, when at one time they were not accepting of it. There are many individuals who are like, I'm against this, but after a while, when they see so many other people with it, they become with it as well. So, but that's the dictionary. When you start to break down the words in the Bible, you begin to see some different things from the context of those who translated the Bible. You know, a lot of people like to study the lexicon of these different words. They like to study the etymology of these different words. And in doing that, there is definitely value. You know, for some of us, we have to get to understand how to use different tools and resources to help us with the Bible. And as opposed to simply looking for an easier translation that are using words that are softer, which a lot of times dilute the meaning of the Bible, sometimes you got to be willing to dig deeper within that difficult translation and to find more resources that, instead of diluting, they give more context and more weight to the words that you're looking at. So now, as we look here, let me get these dictionaries out the way. Give me 1 second. Close one too many windows. Okay, so as we look at this word, we can go to like Strong's Concordance. We can go to a concordance. If any of us know what the concordance is, a concordance is basically an index. Just like in the back of most of the books that you have, especially like educational books, reference books, they're going to have a table of contents in the front and an index in the back. And that index is a list of words, and it shows you where to go find those words in the book. So if you're looking for a particular word in the book, you use the index, you find it, and it will tell you where you can find that word in the book. That's what a concordance does. So in this concordance, it also gives a little bit of meaning of the word, because some words you'll find in the book, and you'll see the same word, but they'll have different meanings, because certain translation of words will translate to the same word in English, but have a different meaning. As you look in a dictionary, you got all these dictionary definitions that have 10 definitions to it, and you also have all of these synonyms or words that mean a similar or same thing. So when we look up this word, we find the word Rab or Rabim. Excuse me, R-A-B and R-A-B-B-I-M. Now, I'm not a Greek scholar. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. But I do know how to use the tools. And when we look this word up, it gives you the words in English on how this same word is used in many different places. And it's used to signify many, great, much, captain, more, long, enough, multitude, mighty, greater, and greatly. It also gives a little bit more. It's contracted from a different word in a different location, meaning the root word is one thing, but then it goes beyond the root to add to it. So you find that this word can mean rank as well. It can mean captain, elder, great. And we have to then look into that. Officer, prince. It means these titles of rulership as well when it's referring to the people that are considered the multitude, meaning they have the most influence. So whether it be that you have the greatest number of people or you have the greatest amount of influence, that could represent the word multitude. So that's important for what we're talking about today. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. You should not follow a great number of people. The majority of people are going in this evil direction. But you also should not follow a person with a great amount of power that is influencing you to go into this evil direction. Okay, so let's dig into that. So let's go to Matthew 10 and 28. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. It says, "And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." So in this context, you have Christ giving you influence and understanding to not be afraid to be persecuted by someone with the power to kill you. You see, great men, people with power, can get away with some things, and because of it, because people see that they can get away with it, they oftentimes fear them. People will begin to fear the person in power because they are able to put them in a predicament that is bothersome to their physical body. Whether you can be put into jail, whether you can be put into a casket, whether you can be detained and prevented from doing certain things, certain rights and liberties being taken from you. These type of things influence the decision-making process of people. But the Bible says don't follow a multitude to do evil. And so what is sometimes the process in which happens? Because of someone's influence, they convince you to do something that you shouldn't do to gain an advantage that they want to keep over you or over other people. Let's make an example out of that. I'm sure you watch TV because this only happens in TV. It doesn't happen in the real world. But where you'll have a cop or FBI agent or whatever that is forcing a witness or a so-called witness to lie. Forcing a so-called witness to give a testimony that is not real, that is not their own, and is not something that can be validated, but they're doing it to give false imprisonment of someone else they're trying to go after. Okay, that only happens in TV. Don't happen in real life. No one has ever seen in real life where a cop, a crooked cop, has falsely imprisoned our people. No one has ever seen a situation like that, right? So we're only using television as the example. But hopefully you can get the understanding. So it's saying here, and fear not them which kill the body and are not able to kill the soul. Because man does not have the ability to kill the soul. Only God has the ability to kill the soul. So if you're going to have fear, have the fear of the Lord and not the fear of men, which could then cause you to do something silly. In many examples we see in the Bible, like one of my favorite stories in the Bible in 2 Maccabees chapter 7, chapter 6 and 7 to be honest, where you have the tormentors, the oppressors, forcing our people to commit a sin in front of others because it would weaken the faith of those who are onlooking. Forcing them to commit that sin and even giving them opportunities to fake the sin, to be an influence over others. And those are people who were multitudes, if you will, who had great honor and respect and influence over many people, and their singular action could have swayed the actions of many others. Now, I encourage you to go read that for yourself. We're not going to go into it today. It's my favorite, and we always will end up reading the whole chapter if we do that. Okay, so it says, neither, let me get back to it. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wresh judgment. So as we continue on, we're going to keep talking about this verse in particular and getting the fullness of it. Because we have to understand from what we've heard so far is that great men, men of power, men of wealth, authority, and great influence, they can kind of sway the minds of the people and kind of convince you to do evil, or convince everybody to go down the evil path because of their influence. But the thing is, Job spoke about people like this. Now, let's go to Job 32:9. Job chapter 32 and verse 9. It says, great men are not always wise, neither do the aged understand judgment. Now, when using this precept, a lot of times we're going to be talking about the aged, because aged men, generally speaking, should have had enough time on the earth to gain a lot of influence, should have had enough time on the earth to grow in their reputation with many different people of different age groups, so they know more people and have been around and had time to experience different things with these people. They also have had time to rank up and level up. As we saw in the Strong's Concordance, when we're speaking about the word multitude, which is the Hebrew word transliterated to rab, it talks about being a captain or an elder, an officer, a prince, person with rank, reputation, and authority. And more than likely, a person who is an elder has probably lived a lot of years. So it says great men are not always wise. Unfortunately, though, despite the fact that these men have been living a long time, or women, because we got to make sure that women understand that this part can play in their favor or not, against them as well. We got to understand that just because you old don't mean you wise. Just because you got rank don't mean you wise. Just because you're in a certain position does not mean you're wise. And you have to be careful with that as a person who is a follower of a leader, which these men titles that we just read about in that in the Strong's Concordance, they got influence. A captain is going to tell hundreds or thousands of people what to do. An elder is looked at and respected and revered to be the leader in which you should just be able to trust and follow because of all of their knowledge. But that's a thing that you should not do, because you have to be able to make the discernment, the decision on if the judgment, if the counsel, if the influence is correct. Because if it's not, you're going to be accountable for that. So it says, great men are not always wise, neither do the aged understand judgment. Therefore I said, hearken to me. I also will show mine opinion. So this is a young man showing his opinion to elders to him. People who have more influence, which would give them the multitude of the influence. But he said, you got to hearken to me because I need to show you my opinion on why I think, why I'm confident that what you're doing is wrong. And I can't just follow and go with that because my life is on the line. It says, behold, I waited for your words, and I gave ear to your reasons, while ye searched out what to say. Yet I attended unto you, and behold, there was none of you that convinced Job. See, be mindful that people's wisdom is used to convince people. It's used to convince and influence. It says, or that answered his words. Lest ye should say, we have found out wisdom. God thrusteth him down, not man. Now he have not directed his words against me, neither will I answer him with your speeches. Now, let's go to the next area. Let's go to Ecclesiasticus 13 and 23. It says, one moment. Sirach, chapter 13, verse 23. When a rich man speaketh, every man holdeth his tongue, and look what he saith. They extol it to the clouds. But if the poor man speak, they say, what fellow is this? And if he stumble, they will help to overthrow him. Matter of fact, let's go up a little bit. Verse 21. A rich man beginning to fall is held up of his friends, but a poor man being down is thrusted away by his friends. When a rich man is fallen, he hath many helpers. He speaketh things not to be spoken, and yet men justify him. And the poor man slipped, and yet they rebuked him too. He spake wisely, and could have no place. When a rich man speaketh, every man holdeth his tongue. And look what he hath said. They extol it to the clouds. But if the poor man speak, they say, what fellow is this? And if he stumble, they will help to overthrow him. So now we got to understand that. The person who got the money has the power, has the influence, and everybody's willing to listen. Even when he's wrong, they'll go with him. But the poor man, even when he's right, people will be against him just because he's poor. So a rich man will be rich in money, yes, but rich in influence. A poor man can be poor in money, yes, but also poor in influence. See, we have to understand that there are dynamics based on class systems in life. And though, America does away with the class system in the way that it outwardly expresses it, even though we're still here in the class system, it's just used in a different way. But everybody ain't equal, is what this is saying. Everybody don't have the same level of respect. Everybody don't have the same level of influence. Everybody doesn't have the same level of power. So, in knowing that and understanding that, when we look at Exodus 23 and 2, we're going to have to better understand what this is talking about. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. And we read that the word multitude, when you breaking down what it meant in the ancient language, it wasn't simply talking about a large number of people with no power. It wasn't simply talking about that, but sometimes it was also inferring a person that may be even one person that just has a lot of power that covers a multitude of people. Like, give you an example, the president who we spoke about earlier, he's one individual, but he has a lot of influence over not only the United States, but the entire world. So, when you give him that seat, when you give him that position, when you rise to that position, because that's what happens in the presidency, in the outward eyes, you have risen to that position. But on the inward world, people will argue and say that, well, the president is really appointed. This is meant to be a person that the people will gravitate to, and the majority of the people will listen to. It says, when the rich man speaketh, everybody listens. when the president speaks, he has a much bigger platform than when Azaniah speaks. He can get millions of people around the world to watch his teleconference or his broadcast. Whereas I don't have that same influence. But it doesn't mean that he's always right and I'm always wrong. I may not be the president. I may not have went to, law school. I may not have all the advisors that the president has. But that doesn't mean that I'm always wrong and he's always right. I have an advantage on being right on some things just because I'm using the Bible and he's not. So it says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. And that multitude can consist of people that are outside of a large number of people, but it could also include people who have a large number of influence. So now, you got to examine that and never let anyone, whether it be your friend, a group of people, witnesses, the common opinion and perceptions of just people in general that might not even actually know each other. These things can't move us to make faulty decisions. It can't move us to say that what you're doing is not as bad as what this person is doing when it's the same thing. It can't make you sway in your judgment and say, well, this is a heightened situation and this is a lesser situation. Because what tends to happen is, and y'all see it in society, right? The person with a lot of influence is going to get less of a punishment. And the person with less of an influence is going to get the worst punishment. But that's not righteous judgment. It's not about the influence. It's not about the wealth. It's not about the power. But what it's about is the sin. If you commit adultery, two people commit adultery equally, but one is a president and they sweep it under the rug, and the other is just a regular guy and they make a big deal out of him, and to which, it's all over the news. It's all press coverage. His wife is divorcing him. Well, the president was like, hey, don't tell nobody. So what if you having a divorce? We're not gonna make a big deal out of your situation. But the other guy, we're gonna blow it up. Make a huge deal out of it. Embarrass him. Make sure the world knows about it. Broadcast it in front of thousands, millions. But for you, we're just gonna sweep it under the rug. Nobody ever know about it. That's not something that should be done here. And that's what it's trying to tell you in this verse of chapter 23 and verse 2. Okay. Now it says, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. See, what happens in the decline after many is you had an opinion that was contrary to the multitude, the many, the powerful. But now you declined from that original stance and you went toward theirs. It says that you should not decline after many to wrest judgment. You should not answer in any way that is taking the side that the majority is on. You should not bend to the reason that the majority is on just for the sake that the fact that the majority is dealing with it, because that would be a perversion of justice. Now, a lot of times we do this. This is where y'all can relate, okay? Nobody does this that I'm aware of, right? But when you're in jury duty and you just want to go home, you gotta, if you don't get a majority rule or whatever it is, a certain amount of people, then you gotta stay and keep going and get more facts. And so a lot of times, people would just say what needs to be said just so they can leave. But that ain't righteous judgment. So when you do that, you pervert the justice, and a wrong judgment ends up getting passed. And that has its own reciprocal effects. God is asking you not to decline to do good. But he is asking you to decline to do evil. Like, don't do evil. The thing is, the thing that's godly, very few people favor. Most people favor sin. Even though there's a lot of people claiming to be godly, deep down inside they favor sin. So let's get Deuteronomy 16 and 19. It says, thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. The word rest, that's not a word that I think most of us would know. So we're going to go a couple of different ways to figure it out. The word rest, dictionary-wise, means to forcibly pull someone or something. So you shall not wrest judgment. You shall not forcibly pull judgment. Now, but as we go into also getting the Hebrew Strong's number for the concordance, it says to stretch out, incline, turn, stretch forth, turn aside, bow, decline, pitch, bow down, turn away, spread, pervert, extend, outstretch, carry aside. Bend away, including moral deflection. So it says, thou shalt not be morally deflected in judgment. You shall not bend the judgment. You shall not decline from giving the judgment. You should not pervert the judgment. These are the things that looking up and understanding these words better help you understand. Thou shalt not respect persons. So it's saying that in the semicolon after it, that thou shalt not respect persons. So what happens? People wrest judgment when they respect persons. When they have more respect for one person than they would for another. When they have that respect for that person because of his status, his stature, his money, his power, his position, his influence. It says, thou shalt not respect persons, comma, neither take a gift. See, sometimes, as we read on, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise, sometimes people will give you gifts to make you change your judgment. They will give you positions of power right along with them. They will give you money. They will, do whatever they can to find something that you like, that you want, and offer it to you so that it will cause you to choose to do something different than you would have naturally in their favor. For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. Because as judges of this earth, we're supposed to judge righteous judgment, just judgment. But there are influences in this world that may cause us to do differently. Money is a big one, of course. But there's so many different things that cause you to say or do things that you shouldn't do. So it says, thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons. So understand that these two are going hand in hand. And as we go back to Exodus 23 and 2, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. So don't follow the multitude to do evil, nor should you speak in a cause where you have been forcibly pushed in a direction to give bad judgment. And the force don't have to be a gun to your head. The force don't have to be a knife to your throat. The force can be, hey, I'll put this money in your hand. Hey, I'll put you in this position of power. As you saw, remember when we looked up the word multitude. It went into different ranks: captain, officer, prince, elder. It says, neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. Now it's also saying that this tends to happen to a poor man. So that's got to be examined. Because you and I fit somewhere into the spectrum of rich and poor. Of great and not so great. And God forbid you have that rank over me. You have that power over me. And that caused no one to listen to the true judgment that I may be able to give. So, we're at Deuteronomy 16 and 19, and we went over to Exodus. Now let's go to 1 Samuel 8 and 3 to talk about those gifts. I believe that's where I want to be. It says, and his sons walked not in his ways and turned aside after lucre and took bribes and perverted judgment. So this is Samuel's sons. It says at verse 1, and it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. So it was their job to judge. They were appointed to that job. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. And they were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways. So Samuel was known as a man who walked in the ways of the Lord, but his sons were wicked. His sons didn't do that. But turned aside after lucre. They turned aside. They rest after lucre, meaning money. They took bribes. They took gifts from people. And those two things perverted their judgment, which meant when they were supposed to judge the people, they didn't give righteous judgment. Verse 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Now this was a point in time when there was no king of Israel, but they were just judges. And the nation of Israel looked and wanted what the other nations had, which they had kings. And this was the start of a very bad situation for us. Let's also go to Amos 5 and 12. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just. They take a bribe, and they turn aside the poor in the gate from their right. So the just are getting afflicted when they should not be getting afflicted. People are taking bribes and turning aside from the poor. So the poor are having to stay at the bottom, having to stay without getting whatever they need. Meanwhile, you're taking the bribe to strengthen what you need. Let's read up some. Let's go to verse 9. That strengtheneth the spoiled against the strong, so that the spoiled shall come against the fortress. They hate him that rebuketh in the gate, and they abhor him that speaketh uprightly. See, a lot of people, when you say they, that's showing you that it's a large number of people. They hate him that rebuketh in the gate. They abhor him that speaketh uprightly. The popular thing is not always the right thing. The right thing is not always the popular thing. For as much, therefore, as your treading is upon the poor, See, the people tend to take advantage of the poor. And you take from him burdens of wheat. Ye have built houses of hewn stone, but ye shall not dwell on them. Ye have planted vineyards, but ye shall not drink of them. These things are happening where you're being cursed because of your oppression of the poor and your unrighteousness in the judgment. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. That's why you will build and not take advantage of. Therefore, the prudent shall keep silence. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just. The sins that people have is focused and afflicted on the just, taking bribes and turning aside the poor in the gate from their rights. Now, that's a heavy thing because we get into understanding a little bit now. It's this whole Exodus 23 is really focusing on people in that position of power and their abuse of it. And everybody going along with it and allowing it to continue to happen, to continue to abuse that power. It says, Proverbs 18:5, it is not good to accept the persons of the wicked, to overthrow the righteous in judgment. That's not a good thing. God doesn't want that. God doesn't want you to accept the wicked man and justify him and then punish and oppress the righteous. Go to Exodus. Isaiah 5:23. It says, which justify the wicked for reward. See, there are people who will justify the wicked for a reward, as we've already read a little bit more, and this is just more precepts backing it up, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Read it again. It says, which justify the wicked for reward and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. So as we read up a little bit, verse 20, it says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. See, there are people who call evil good and good evil, and it's because they have the power to do so. They have the influence to do so. So they can get other people on board. That put darkness for light and light for darkness. That put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine and men of strength to mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for reward and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness, and their bosom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts and despised the word of the Holy One in Israel. So when you have that type of power and it gets backed up so often and so much, and people don't do what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to rebuke their neighbor, where they're supposed to correct their neighbor, it gets you to the point where you'll be devoured. You will get the judgment. And the reason why is because over that time period where you have slid by and people have promoted it and you've done it worse and worse, and to the point where it can easily be said that you've cast away the whole law of the Lord. That you despise the word of God. See, when you're following the multitude to do evil, there's a progression that happens. You go from being righteous to making a mistake. But many of us don't stop at, oops, I really messed up. I didn't even, Then you realize that you messed up. And you know that you just promoted wickedness, that you just promoted evil, but you let it continue. Because now the bribes are good. Now the reward is good. Now you're enjoying the power, the influence. And you can't give that up. But you got to give it up. So let's go to Deuteronomy 24 and 14. Okay. It says, "Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or thy strangers that are in the land within thy gates." So God put these different laws into the Bible because we were doing the exact opposite. He was giving us this stuff for correction. We were good for oppressing our own people. So we would have enough power and influence over them, and then we would take and use that influence and take it to our advantage. And nobody would say anything. Nobody would be against it. God had to be against the abuse and use of your power to that extent. Because think about the slaves in America and how the slave master could punish the slave, but the slave couldn't punish the slave master. The law would always end up putting the slave to death or getting the slave members cut off or increasing his workload or tearing him away from his family. But there was never a judgment that could be done back to the man in the power seat. And that's how we've been done, but don't forget that that's how we did ourselves. We did each other. And that's one reason why certain things got to come upon us the way they have, because we have to make up for the wickedness that we did. It says, "At his day thou shalt give him his hire. Neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be sin unto thee." See, we don't want our situations to become sin when dealing with someone, righteousness, rich versus poor. Job 20 and 19. Now, real quick, while we going there, we gotta understand that you gotta share the broadcast. Shebaniah Israel David SC, welcome to the party. Eleazar, welcome to the party. It's good to have y'all here with us. You know, make sure you hit that share button. Nasael, Nava, Rebecca and Kasaya, Rick, Judah, Leah, Stephen, Betsael, Rhoda, all praises. Onan, what's going on, brother? Shalom and welcome to Midweek Meditations. Today we're talking about not following the multitude to do evil. And we're understanding and learning that that multitude is not just talking about just a bunch of people, but it can also be talking about people in power that have a bunch of influence. People will pervert judgment based on the fact that they have that influence. People will bribe you with gifts, and people will strong arm you with their power into making the decisions that end up oppressing the poor, meaning not just the financially poor, but also those with less influence, with less power. So we got to examine that, because we in many cases can be in a situation to where someone has power and influence over us. And we go along with their side of judgment just because of their influence and their power. They might be the popular. They might have the ability to harm you or to take advantage of you. And if you go against it, you know that they're going to be angry with that. Well, God says don't do that. Don't do that. Now it says in Job 20:19, because he have oppressed and forsaken the poor, because he have violently taken away an house which he builded not. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. There shall none of his meat be left, therefore shall no man look for his goods. This is the long-term situation that a person ends up in when he oppresses the poor. When he uses his power and influence to go against those with no power and influence. You see, as we go back to Exodus 23:2, matter of fact, let's start at 1 this time. Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. See, now we got to get the more understanding, because not only is it talking about a man of power, but this is also in creating a false report and a false witness. Don't the scriptures say in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not? In many different things, right? So let's find out what it says. Exodus 20 and 16. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That's one of the 10 Commandments. That's something that's brother to brother. So Exodus 23:1 is going further and deeper into it. Thou shalt not raise false witness, not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. See, a lot of times a witness, you break one of the 10 Commandments because you go along with somebody else, and you shouldn't. You go along with the popular side, the majority side, the influential side, but you're not really examining the facts and giving righteous judgment. You're just going along with the man of power. That's when you become a person who follows in the multitude to do evil. See, a lot of people think that the person in the power is always right. The person with the influence is always right. The person with the experience and the rank and the position is always right. But a lot of times they end up giving the false report. Remember what happened to Susanna? The elders gave their report and everybody went with it because it was the elders. So I encourage you to read that, because I'm not going to read it for you today. Read the history of Susanna in the Apocrypha. They slandered her. They gave false report. And everybody was going to go with it and put this innocent woman to death. She was the poor in this case because she did not have the influence. She was not the elder. So even when a witness was brought up, it was a false report. But that's what we're supposed to be going and using in things like Matthew 18:15-17. You're supposed to have witnesses if you're going to bring a matter up to try to judge it if they wouldn't be able to handle it on a personal one-on-one basis. You're supposed to have witnesses when you rebuke an elder. You're supposed to do these different things because we want righteous judgment. That's what God wants. And so going back to the original example with Barack Obama, he was able to make certain changes in the government because he used his influence to make more people be willing to accept it. And in our lives, it may not be on a presidential race type of thing, but there will be things that we have to be careful that we don't allow to get passed and to get moved based on influence, but if it's right or if it's wrong according to the Bible. Now, I gotta get some more. See, I wish I had all my notes that disappeared on me earlier today, but it's okay. So Matthew 7 and 13. It says, "Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which goeth in thereat. But straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." See, we got two options. We can go with the group, the multitude, the easy way, the way that seems comfortable, or we can go with the harder path, which is less people that going in that direction. And it seems a little more difficult, not the popular route. But if we want to go into destruction, we got to be careful not to go that popular route. Because look, as it continues, it says, "Beware of false prophets, which come in sheep's clothing." It's in this continuation of this understanding that open wide gate, it may be false prophets pulling you in that direction. But that narrow gate, it may be the unpopular. Look at what happened with Noah. Nobody wanted to hear what he said, but he had the one ark on all the earth that could have saved some people. But the multitude of the people, they were influenced by wickedness. And they wanted to keep doing their thing and never change. That's the goal, is to make sure that you make the changes that you're supposed to make. Learn from what you're supposed to learn. And not enable the multitude to go down these paths. If they're going to go alone and get destroyed by themselves, but not gain so much influence that you pull everybody with you. So, let's see here. When we go to Matthew 7 and 13 and verse 14 here, we're understanding that there are certain things that lead you to destruction. When you look at Exodus 23 and 2, we're learning that in our effort to make a judgment, if we follow the multitude to do evil, that will be the thing that leads us to that destruction. We got to evaluate and judge righteously, not based on appearance, not based on influence, not based on who said it, but based on what it was, what it is. And many of us have failed to do that in our past. But this false report that could be given in verse 1 of Exodus 23, you don't even have to be a part of, and it's best in many cases that you do your best to not be a part of it. But if you get pulled into it because the man of the power was able to pull you into it, just like I say, we use the example of television shows with the cops and whatnot. They'll force you into being a part of what they have to do to wrongfully convict somebody. But then when you get put in that situation and it feels like a gun is to your head to make you make the decision, what you gonna do? Are you gonna bear the false report because the person with the multitude or the power, the most power, convinced you to do that evil? Because if not, something would happen to you, or gave you a gift and they blind your judgment. I'll make you free from jail. You don't have to serve any time if you just lie on this guy. But the Bible in verse 5 says, or verse 4 says, if thou meet thine enemy or ox, if you meet thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. Even your enemy you have to show kindness to and righteousness to. If thou see an ass of him that him hateth, thee lying under the burden, and wouldest forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help him. You got to help even the people that are hated or hate you, or that you hate. These are the things that we must do. So as we examine not following the multitude to do evil, understand what multitude can be. So many other things outside of just a large group of people. Now, we're going to end there today, but I feel like I owe you a little more. So I got to come back with even more, given that I had to try to remember everything that I wrote down. And that's just your benefit. But I was meditating on this because as I have influence over people, as people have influence over me, I think it's important to understand how we get into positions where we end up doing evil. How do we end up in positions where we influence evil? How do we end up in positions to where we're influenced by evil? To where we put up with it for so long? How do we get there? And we get there by lack of understanding in many cases. Because if you are of the understanding that the multitude is always right, and multitude could mean a mass majority of people, it could mean an individual that has a mass majority of the influence. If you understand that, then you have more defense toward doing wickedness, toward bearing false witness. Because there's a lot of brothers, a lot of sisters who have bore false witness on accident. It wasn't their intention. They weren't trying to maliciously do it, but nonetheless it was done. And as we observe the two greatest commandments, which is love thy neighbor as thyself, is one of them. You can't be afford to give false witness on accident or on purpose. You can't afford to be oppressing your brother because you got influence and you can just take advantage. Even though you're wicked and you should get judged, you're not going to get judged because you got friends who will let it slide. It says, verse 6, thou shalt not rest the judgment of the poor in this cause. So be mindful that the poor are the people who have these animals that you're taking advantage of. Because look at what David did with the little ewe lamb. He took somebody else, well, that wasn't what he did. He took Bathsheba. But the prophet gave the example of if a rich man took a poor man's only singular lamb, that would be wrong, right? He was taking advantage of the poor. And David was ready to throw that man in jail. Put him to death, probably. But David had to realize that was him. And he was trying to skate by on his judgment when he was wicked. And when he came to his senses, he was like, you know what, let me get my life right. And that's what we want for people, is to get their life right. It says, thou shalt not wrest the judgment of the poor in this cause. Keep thee far from a false matter. Stay away from false matters. And the innocent and the righteous slay thou not. Don't be persecuting those who are innocent of whatever is being done. Some people are quick to want to persecute somebody, because some people are on the witch hunt and want to persecute anybody. It doesn't have to be that we got the right person, as long as we got a person. It's how some people roll. For I will not justify the wicked. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about justifying the wicked, because we spoke about it a little bit already, but let's go to 1 Kings 8:32. It says, then hear thou in heaven and do, and judge thy servants, condemning the wicked. The wicked are supposed to be condemned. To bring his way upon his head, and justify the righteous. The righteous are supposed to be justified. To give him according to his righteousness. The more righteous you are, the more blessing of righteousness you should receive. It says, when thy people, Israel, be smitten down before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee. That's one of the sins that they did, is justifying the wicked and condemning the righteous. That's one of the sins that we do. But when we do it the right way, it says, and shall turn again to them, when you're doing it the right way, and confess thy name, and pray and make supplication unto thee in this house. Then hear thou in heaven, and forgive the sin of thy people, and bring them again to the land which thou gavest to their fathers. Once we start doing it in that order, condemning the wicked and justifying the righteous, and not vice versa, then we'll be all right. Deuteronomy 25:1. If there be a controversy between men, and that's what this is in Exodus, a controversy between men, and they came unto judgment, that the judges may judge them, then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. And it shall be, if the wicked man be worthy to be beaten, then the judge shall cause him to lie down, and to beat him before his face according to his fault by a certain number. Stop there. We're not beating nobody, of course, right now, but understanding that is always meant to be, from a law perspective, justify the righteous, condemn the wicked. But when you follow the multitude to do evil, you do the opposite. You make the wicked righteous, and you make the righteous wicked. So like I said, I'm going to have to bring the file to next week. I can't be losing my notes. I'm going to have to get judgment for that from myself. But the thing is, the reason why I got to go is because it's time to get with the brothers, to get with the sisters, to now fellowship a little bit, take advantage of the opportunity that we have to get together, have some family feel, some fun, you know. And that's what I'm encouraging each of you to do, is not only do you get your righteousness in studying, but you get your righteousness in the application of brotherly love and unity. That you get your righteousness and joyfulness and gladness of heart when we're doing the commandments. So how many of you are fellowshippers? People who got other friends and family of the belief that you are in around you. If not, it's time to really start putting the work toward building that. Because that is a part of our nation building. That is a part of our change to righteousness and glory. So I encourage you to go to midweekmeditations.com and catch up on everything that you might have missed. If you did not do the Bible Trivia Tuesday, go do it right now. Share it so that your friends and family can do it, because these verses, y'all just look at this as like a storybook, and many times, but these verses, once they start absorbing into your spirit and you've meditated on them, then you can apply them as if they're real in your life. See, in many cases, a scenario is going to come up, and you're not going to think about the scriptures if you've not meditated on it. But for me, that's one of the things that I practice, and then I try to encourage and influence others to do the same. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but what I'm saying is we got to try. We got to put forth effort. So don't follow the multitude to do evil. If you do that, it's a lot of breaking of scriptures that you end up going into by default. So midweekmeditations.com/donations will help you donate to the cause, get better equipment. Maybe my computer won't blow up next time and lose all of my notes if I start putting more towards that equipment. I'm glad you was doing that today, sis. Brother. Glad you was doing that today, because that's what it's all about. Now, I want y'all to also start sending me some messages on some topics that might be good. Remember, Midweek Meditations focus on self-help, things to meditate on that can correct and change your spirit. You know, it's not always looking to break down a deep parable. We might get into it sometimes if it benefits your spirit, but we're looking at salvational issues here. So send me a message with some topics that you want to see. Hit that share button. Make sure you share the daily verses. Make sure you share the Motivation Monday blog. Share the Bible Trivia Tuesday, and share today's video. And go to midweekmeditations.com to get all of those resources in one easy to find spot. Facebook can be a little difficult at times. YouTube don't post anything but videos. You know, so that's what we got today. So I'm going to let you guys go. But with that, I say shalom.